Welcome to those who have just joined us. We are really excited for today's session. It is our final session for the Resilience Through Connection series, and we're excited to have a fun little panelist discussion with some really great folks that we've met over the years. This is actually the first time we've ever done a panelist discussion with our ECHO series, so we're excited to see how this all flows, and I think it's going to be really great. We're going to give everyone about 30 more seconds to get settled in and connected to audio, and then we'll get started with today's session. Just an FYI, we do have some questions to guide the discussion for today's panelists, but if you do have any questions specifically for anybody, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end of the session to answer any questions from the audience. All right, we are sitting at 11 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started with today's session. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. The purpose of this session is to really hear from people with lived experience who can share some of how their social connections and people in their lives have helped them build resilience. So the goal really is to just share some different resources that people have been able to access. And we did actually create a program directory that has been uploaded to iEcho that features a lot of inclusive programs throughout North Dakota. So please feel free to check that out, and I can post a copy of that in the chat at the end of this session. So I'm really happy to introduce our panelists today. We'll go ahead and get started with Christopher Cleveland. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about your support system, your family, your community groups, all that fun stuff.
Hi, yes. I'm based out in Moab, Utah. So we're famous for the Arches and Canyonlands National Parks. Primarily my support system is filled with chosen families. So yes, I do have my parents and my grandparents, but I also have friends that kind of have stayed the course since at least high school or even college and that sort of thing. And actually, a few of them even helped me with assignments related to my graduate study that I just recently completed for my master's degree.
Congrats on that. That is a huge accomplishment. So thank you so much.
Yeah, especially in relation, hold on one second, especially in relation to the fact that I'm autistic and the stats on autistic people making it to a post-grad degree, not very high.
Well, yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Exactly. And congrats on your accomplishments. I'm happy to introduce Elizabeth Romanek. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? You're muted, Liz. Kyle's pleased because he's the one who always does that.
That's okay. Well, I'm Elizabeth Romanek, and I'm normally from Bismarck, but now I'm working up in Minot with the North Dakota Center with Persons with Disabilities. I graduated back in 2018, and I graduated from college from 2022.
And where did you graduate from college?
From college, I got a diploma from a paraprofessional here at Minot State.
Thank you so much for being here, Liz. And Chaz.
Hello, I am Chaz Brobst. I live in Bismarck, North Dakota right now, and I work for the North Dakota Council on Developmental Disabilities. I am the advocacy coordinator, which I have a hand in all things advocacy that's put on by the DD Council. And yeah, I just delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you. I've said it many times throughout this series, big fan of the work that the DD Council does, and a lot of that work is attributed to Chaz's activities and great stuff that they do. All right, and Kyle.
So my name is Kyle Erickson. You'll have probably seen me the past 7 weeks because I work with Krista here at the Center for People with Disabilities. And my support system, interestingly enough, it's in a bit of a transition because before I used to lean on my family quite a bit for support, and I'm slowly, and it's a conscious decision, I am starting to move away from that and I'm moving towards like caregiver supports and like within the community. Because one thing I'm trying to plan ahead, as much as I love my family, they're not always gonna be there. So I don't want to get myself into a position where I, depend on mom and dad for everything. And then 20, 30 years down the road, my parents aren't there anymore. And I don't want to put myself in a tough spot then.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Kyle. And yeah, like we said, today's panel discussion is really to talk about like how do we build some of those connections to um, make our support systems bigger. So actually, that is kind of our first question here. How did you build your support system? Chris, do you want to lead us in that conversation?
Yeah, sure. So I actually began with nothing when I moved to Moab when I was 10, except for my father and my stepmom. And I had even less than that when I was in California before I moved with them, because even though I lived with my bio mom, she was far from supportive. So I kind of started with with trusting my intuition and leaning into those people who, because I was autistic and they knew it, would teach me, hey, you're an intelligent guy, you'll grasp this. But so as such, let's work these skills that you need, like a lesson in class or something like that. So that way you can grasp them. And then I would apply those lessons and kind of make friends of my peers that way. Until last, I have the support network that I do now, which is professional, personal, and has only received one blow in the last 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. How about Liz? How did you build your support system?
How I support my system is by like before I build mine, when I first started here in mine, I didn't know where my life would begin because, but I know when I was in Bismarck, I had a lot of people. But when I was up here, I didn't know who will support me. But the one thing, the way I build my support is from within me, what I need, them for feeling that they're like boosting my confidence. Like the way I do it is like having them like building self-esteem in me and having that powerful message of boosting who I am.
And I guess I know you pretty well, Liz. What kind of things have you used to help build self-esteem? Because I mean, that's easier said than done.
One of the big things is to trust. To trust my own instincts and trying to trust my friends. Because mostly all my friends are on here too. That I normally get to know them first before trusting them. The big thing is like I normally try to build that trust and have that face-to-face contact.
Right. And is there any certain groups that kind of helped you navigate that? Like I know you're pretty involved with some of your church groups and Miss Amazing and
Yes, there's a lot. One of them actually really brought out the best version of myself is the all group, the advocates living their lives, for sure, because it really helps me to advocate for myself more. And I feel like there's a lot more than that piece of it. Because I also get something from Independence Inc. here from Minot called peer support. I go to that, but I feel like the all group really brings out the real version of myself.
that's great. Thank you. Chaz, how about you?
My support system really has changed over the years. Different stages of your life, your support system really changes. And as someone who lives with a serious mental illness, people have come in and gone out of my lives. I mean, people that I thought that would never leave with a serious mental illness, there's just no guarantee that people are going to stick around. Uh, and Liz made me write notes. She told me I had to prepare and write. So I'm a fly by the seat of my pants type of person. So trying to look at my notes too. So I guess with my support system currently, a lot of it started with on a professional level and then transpired into more of those supportive people in my life. My family is not supportive of all parts of my life, just some of them. And I guess one of the big things that I had to learn is that it's okay to disengage or limit contact with those toxic relationships. And unfortunately, that meant limiting time with my family too. But it has been the best thing for my mental health to limit some of that time with them. So with the support system that I have now, I when I lived in Minneapolis, things looked a lot different there, and I was on a lot of groups and boards and stuff in Minneapolis. So when I came back to North Dakota, I kind of looked for some of those similar boards, and one of those was the Consumer Family Network. And from there, I got a lot of supportive people in my life and stuff, and that led to Advocates Leading Their Lives, and I joined that board, which eventually led to employment with the DD Council. And I do have some supportive family. Really try to stay in contact with my nieces and nephews. But so, yeah, and of course the professional support, which I've had some sort of therapist since I've been 16, 17. But unfortunately, even that hasn't been consistent because, well, one, I moved around a lot, but just therapists, when you have a serious mental illness and different diagnoses, you become that difficult patient, and I was that one for a while. So lots of therapists dropped me for various reasons. The current one I have now, we just had our 4-year theraversary, which is the longest I've ever had any therapist. So, and she is absolutely amazing. So credit a lot of my recovery and being able to do the work I do because I finally found somebody that is willing to listen and help get me back on track.
I really appreciate that candid response because yeah, like therapy really like turned my life around. But the thing that people don't talk about with therapy is you have to find that person that clicks. And then it is like there is turnover in that field. So I appreciate you actually kind of shedding light on some of the real things that can happen because I hear a lot of people say like, oh, just go to therapy. And it's like, all right, it isn't as simple as that. I mean, I wish it was.
Yeah. And that it is okay to say, this person's not working out for me and not think that you have to stay with them just because you were assigned this therapist. If that's the case, you can shop around for therapy because sometimes it doesn't work for one or both of you. And yeah, it's okay to look.
Right. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a very lucky man because, okay, so I'm a disability professional. And when I entered this field, one of the first things that I noticed was how tight of a community the center is and, the whole disability services community. And in the little short time that I've been in this field, some of my coworkers and colleagues have become my best friends. So I'm really fortunate there. Like, and then in my other time, in my off time, my side hustle, I'm a stand-up comedian, and comedy is a really tightly knit community too. So I'm, fortunate I have some really good people in my life. And even on like the professional support side, I have a caregiver that helps me get my butt out the door every morning to get to work, and she's become like family to me. And then even when I use public transportation, and most of those bus drivers have been a huge source of support for me because, I see them now more than I often I see my family. So yeah, I'm a very lucky guy in the sense of my support system. Very lucky guy.
So with your comedy, were you just like looking on Facebook and you just happened to find a group and then it clicked?
I just kept getting upstage and event. It's one of those industries where if you keep showing up, you're gonna find your people. You just
Good to know.
gotta you just gotta keep showing up.
Good advice. Good advice. So this one's a little bit of a heavier question. Have you ever felt lonely during a certain time of your life? And what was that experience like? And how did you cope with it? Chris, are you willing to answer that one?
Yeah, I actually have, let me see, let me count it real quick. About three major episodes in my life of that happening. The first one was when I was 9. The second one was after I actually finished up my undergrad studies. And then the third one was when my mentor of 13 years um, succumbed after a long battle with cancer and alcohol-induced hepatitis and died, what'll now be nearly 4 years ago. The one at 9 being because before I moved to Moab with my dad, I was purposefully and systemically starved or dehydrated into submission when I would have meltdowns and that sort of thing. Plus, my older brother was kind of the golden child, and I had a baby sister at that time, both of whom were receiving more than I. And then I made a choice to stand up to them for a better life, which I ultimately got. And that was a very lonely time because it was just me, little old me, against my brother, stepdad, and mom for a year.
And did you recognize it as loneliness back then?
No, it took until I was much older because I wasn't introspective enough, and my grasp of the English language, not because I was native to another language, but just because I had speech delays, wasn't enough to where I could convey that or understand that that was what was going on. But as an adult, as I've been introspecting more with some of the spiritual practices I've been taking, I do understand that that's what it was, especially after I felt the same way when my mentor died and after my undergrad studies were complete.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like introspection and self-reflection is a really good strategy. Sorry, I keep asking follow-up questions. Was there a certain strategy that taught you that? Like, was it like mindfulness meditation or?
It was a combination. Because I didn't deal with just loneliness. I dealt with emotions that might have been sparked by the loneliness. So like anger, or anxiety or those sorts of things. So for the actual loneliness itself, I kind of dealt with it. Sorry, I'm in a teacher's lounge, so if it gets a little noisy, I apologize. But anyway, um, I dealt with the loneliness itself uh, by practicing the Buddhist principle of non-attachment. So kind of treating the emotions as something that I don't have to hold on to anymore. And then just kind of acknowledging them and making peace with them. For the anger, especially early on, I took up different forms of martial arts that were more muscle driven, like karate, bojutsu, in which I have a black belt, and my most recent form, kenjutsu, which is like samurai sword stuff, where I could just channel it out in the form of shouts or blows and that sort of thing, at least to begin with. I I probably should stop there, just because we'll probably have another opportunity for me to elaborate on some of those other strategies. And I don't want to take too much time from the other panelists, but in a nutshell, I try to find ways to either um, use the emotions as a fuel during moments of physical activity, So that way I wasn't feeling them when I was done, like maybe I was too tired to care. Or I was asking myself, why am I feeling this and how do I let it go?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chris. And we have a comment that says that that's a really great strategy. And I think that that's what we're all kind of interested in is, like when we are in these like moments of loneliness, like what can we do to climb out of it? Like, yes, you can sit in that emotion for a little bit and process everything, but like what really helps you move past this and not succumb to it? So, Liz, are you comfortable? Like, have you ever felt lonely in your life and how did you respond?
Yes, well, to start with, that I did realize and felt I was alone, but I gradually felt alone, and I didn't even realize why I was alone. And as I've grown so much of learning why am I so alone, I don't know what's going to happen. It is an uncertain time, but the way I realized that I had a friend, the way I coped and respond, I never had a therapist. I never had therapy before ever in my life, but I had a good friend of mine who is a certified coach from this ULA lifestyle framework. When I got into that, I felt like, wait a minute, I don't have to be alone. I got myself. I get to keep myself company, and we don't realize you don't have to be alone because we have ourselves. Because it's time for us, just one on one with that person. The way I coped, I do have feelings, but we can't just avoid those feelings or emotions. You can't avoid them. But the way I started with this framework, I felt like more engaged than ever because I had way more support team I cannot even imagine. Because I have like over 10 million people in my life now.
I love that for you. And you said it was the ULA framework. Is it OOLA?
Correct.
OOLA, ULA
Yes.
framework.
It really helps me because it helps breaking down your blockers, how to stay away from hula blockers. Some of them are like what Chris said, like anger, lack of focus. I normally work on accelerators of being grateful what you have kind of thing. The strategy I normally use is breathing exercises or using YouTube YouTube meditation. It helps me to regulate myself. I learned this from a friend that I never thought I was so stressed or overstimulated. I just need to focus on my needs, not everybody else's. And that's what my big trouble is.
Exactly. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate that. Jazz, have you ever felt lonely and how did you cope with it?
There have been different periods in my life that I was lonely, and I still deal with loneliness. Even though I consider myself to have a pretty full life with supportive people in it now, there's still those times where it doesn't matter how many people you have in your life, you just sometimes feel lonely. Um, One of the loneliest times in my life was, well, besides psych hospitalizations, but was when I first moved to Minneapolis. I ended up living in a hotel for 2.5 months while trying to get into transitional living, and that led to some bad choices and severe suicidality. It did, however, lead me to a church that was within walking distance of that hotel. And even almost 10 years since moving back, still a member of that church, and it really brought me to that church family. And I still consider them part of my support system, some of those church members. Even though I don't really consider myself a religious person anymore, that church family still, I continue to, talk with them and stuff. And when I go to Minneapolis for different appointments and stuff, that is still my home base. Um, And it was because of that church that I was able to accept that I was part of the queer community, and finally having that a positive gay relationship to witness, which was not something I was ever really exposed to in North Dakota. And now, as a single person that works from home, and I'm typically an introvert, I sometimes have a hard time getting myself out of the house for anything other than appointments. I've had to work hard and put forth the extra effort to find people and groups to be part of in the community. I do have one family here in Bismarck that has always opened their doors for me. I'm always invited to Sunday dinners over there. Can basically just kind of show up and, have that typical family dynamic. And I don't go over for a lot of Sunday dinners, but I know that the option's always there, and it's my choice that, I sometimes don't go over. And then I have several friends and stuff that just talk through on Messenger, or, have a couple friends that like I can call day or night. One of them that is currently on the other side of the world, so it works when I can't sleep, that I can call them and it's middle of the day for them. So it's all good and willing to listen. So yeah, my supports are there, but like just learning to what works for you to help with that loneliness and stuff, I guess, is really the big thing.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask a follow-up question, but I see it's already on my panel question. So Kyle.
So yeah, I recently got out of a pretty toxic relationship, which led to me having to like a lot of key positions in my support system kind of drifted out of my life, and so there was a period of loneliness, but kind of that caused me to throw all my energy that I would spend on like my social battery into other causes, whether it could be my advocacy work here, my work I do at the center, or my comedy. I just to make up for my personal life being kind of a dumpster fire right now. I just kind of threw my whole attention into these causes, and I think that's the thing that people need to remember is when you do feel lonely, lean in your other interests, like your other parts of your identity, because if you keep leaning into that, your people are eventually gonna find you. That's just the way the universe or life works. Is if you keep being in place, putting yourself in places where it does align with your identity, your people are gonna find you.
Yeah, exactly. It's so nice. I like how you're talking about your identity in like multifacets, because
Yeah, yeah,
that's how we are
exactly.
as humans, and it's really important to recognize all of that. And
Nobody in this entire world is just one thing.
mhm. And sometimes I get very like tunnel visioned where like I'll forget other parts. So it's kind of like nice to take a look back at like what are all of my different identities, and like who am I maybe not connecting with because I'm so honed in on, one aspect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what are some of the signs or feelings that might indicate that you're feeling lonely, or maybe just not in a good space? Like, I'm going to kind of like open this up. Like, what is some signs that maybe you're struggling with like trauma, and it might be feeding into these feelings of loneliness?
Krista,
Chris,
do you mind if I weigh in and then I can go back on mute?
yeah,
Okay, so this is kind of gonna be deep, but there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And being alone is fine, but when you're alone and I don't know how else to describe it, but when you're alone and it hurts, like deep in your chest, you feel isolated. That's when you're lonely and not just alone.
that's a really good reflection and good to consider.
I'll say for myself that I had moments of tension. So maybe my shoulders were really kind of bunched up and I couldn't really do very much of anything, or I was feeling aches and pains and that sort of thing, especially if I was anxious and lonely. Or what else was there when I was feeling those episodes of lonely? Um, Not necessarily suicidal ideology, but certainly thoughts of worthlessness or that there was no one to give a darn about what would happen to me and that sort of thing. Especially whenever something to that effect was articulated aloud, because my father actually did that sometimes before he got on mood stabilizers. And so, I would hear him say that and I'd be like, oh crap, you know, if this person's that I'm supposed to love deeply is saying this out loud, and there must really be no one who thinks that highly of me. And then in those moments, I'm like desperately scrambling to contradict that, or I was rather, so, or find something to contradict that. And my mentor was really good about that before he died, because he truly wanted nothing except my happiness and put me on a good path before he got really sick and then died.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, Chris. And I mean, words have power, even when you think it's just like an offhand comment, like people really do internalize that. So it's, something that we really need to be mindful of. Liz, do you know what your signs or feelings might be that indicating that you're feeling lonely?
I know I had a couple I wrote down that not the one I put down is not being myself.
Mm-hmm.
That really showed me a huge part for myself. And I've been one of them is feeling closed off and shaming myself. I also like when I feel guilty or anything, I always pick at my nails too. That's another big one for me. Another three really it really cut me off guard, but one of them is failing is our fault. I just feel like sometimes I feel like I've been feeling it's all my fault and taking all the blame.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that's huge from these three, I'm gonna say, is very huge on me because they impact a lot. Is doubting and being hard on ourselves, lying, shutting down, and not trusting my support system. That is the big one for me because when I start lying or not saying anything, I feel like that's when I start to shut down, not telling people. That's a huge one for me because I want to share that because it feels I like to just being isolated, but Carl has been talking about being oppressed. I feel like I just want to run away and not listen to anything that's going on. And that's me shutting everything down.
Very relatable. Actually, when you first started talking, I was like, are you watching me, Liz?
No.
The negative self-talk, I actually did not realize how detrimental to your health that can be, because I'm someone who really relies on self-deprecating humor. And I didn't realize that when I was like making all these like self-deprecating jokes out loud, how much my internal monologue was actually very negative towards myself. And I happened to make a joke to a coworker, and they ended up giving me a really long speech about how bad it was, and I was like, get your toxic positivity away from me. But then when I really like thought about it, I was like, no, this is actually pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce Lee is even quoted as saying, "Don't talk negative about yourself, even if you're joking, because your body doesn't know the difference."
Oh, that's whew.
Well, and another thing I want to bring up, Chris, is I don't know how many disability before professionals realize that negative self-talk is pretty rampant in the disability community because when you spend some or all of your life being told that you're less than, eventually you start to believe it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, I don't think we realize how deficit based a lot of our conversations are. Like, we're always trying to say that we're looking for people's like strengths and stuff like that, but I've been in so many like person-centered planning meetings where it's the exact opposite. We're talking more about all the things that people are failing at or not, performing well at. And it seems like there's almost like ridiculously high standards for people with disabilities, but then like extremely low expectations.
For example, if you have a coworker in the office that doesn't have their hair done, it's no big deal. But if I go into the office someday not saying none of my coworkers to do this, but if I lived in a workplace that wasn't super like so supportive, if I came into the office with a messy hair, I'd be that guy in a wheelchair that doesn't know how to fix his hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely goes back to that competence deviance theory, if anybody's interested in looking that up. Chaz, do you have any signs or feelings that kind of indicate that you might be feeling lonely?
Yes. So I have identified some that kind of show that I'm kind of either lonely or that there's something not quite right in my body. And one of those is I get really needy. And usually this really shows its face like during therapy. Um, and I guess, or where it's noticed the most, it's like when I am closing up session, it's like, since that's my safe space, it's like I just don't want to leave the office, because I'm safe there. I can say anything, and I just have this internal like need to just want to stay in that office in this safe place. So that's one spot. And I think um, in the past, when I'd get lonely or have things when things are going south, I would have this need of wanting to be taken care of. And I had pretty unhealthy ways of getting that need taken care of. So really having to find more healthy ways of dealing with the loneliness or anything that is not quite right um, in my life. And I have found those things in kind of like, if I notice that, like when I see my therapist and I don't want to leave the office, I'll call a friend on the way home, or I will do that Sunday dinner with the family here in town. I'll call a friend and we'll go out for drinks or whatever. But really, for me, it was a lot of noticing. For so long, like I just lived in this like here and now and just not like noticing what was happening and just instantly like reacting to the negative feelings and not knowing how to sit with those. Um, and a lot of times that came out in the suicidality, and if there was an emotion I didn't like, I wanted to get rid of that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And learning that it's okay to sit with these emotions, no matter how uncomfortable it is. The emotion itself isn't going to kill you. It's how you react to those emotions that can either make it more of a positive thing or really take you down south. So a lot of self-awareness.
Depression is one of the only medical conditions that I've ever experienced where the symptoms, it almost seems like the goal of a depression is to make you worse. Because once you do feel depressed, like when I get depressed, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to take my antidepressants. For some reason, depression, once it sets in and it sinks your claws in you, it just wants to keep tightening your hold. And so I would encourage anybody that when you do when you do start seeing signs that you are getting a little depressed, fight it. Because if you don't fight it, it's just going to keep doing things to you that are going to make it worse.
There's like some very insightful bits coming out of here. Like, yeah, depression's goal is to be more depressed. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
100%.
Depression wants to kill you. That's its goal.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
wants to kill you and destroy your life.
Yeah. And it's funny you're talking about that because even removing all the science and all that stuff for a bit, in Buddhist spirituality, depression is regarded as a immersion into ego, which is not the same as hubris or even narcissism, just because of the I and me center talk. I am this, I am that. And so a lot of especially like monks and people that are practicing Buddhists like myself will encourage people who are feeling depressed or want to combat the symptoms to find something where they're giving to somebody else and realizing, yes, I actually can do these things. I will do these things. Like in my case, I'm pretty alone where I'm at as far as being a resource in my town. And so I may not be able to bring down all the bigotry, ignorance, or something like that that I see in my world. But what I can do is inspire those who, when they come together, can do that to rally.
And this is why Chris was invited to speak at the Resilience Through Connection series. Kyle, did you have something to add? Muted.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be a session with me if I didn't do that once. Like, but I was just gonna add that something that really helped me is right now I'm in a profession where I get to help. It almost feels like I get to help former versions of me that were going through some really tough things. Cause I've had like people that I've helped through my work that I can empathize and be like, hey, I was in that same position 10, 15 years ago. So I'm always reminded of something my grandfather used to tell me. He used to say, you know you made it in life when you're the person you needed as a kid. And that, yeah, and I feel like I've achieved that here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny thinking about all of the Echo series that we've all collaborated on, and definitely it's very much sparked from what we needed, 5, 6 years ago and whatever. So yeah, thank you for that. I do want to. So, are there any like specific people, places, or programs that have just really helped you feel seen? And I know a lot of you have already said a few. So, is there any more that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I can start first. This is where it gets really kind of
Cutting out just a little bit, Chris. Okay, Chris is frozen, so we'll go to Liz and then we'll come back when he gets connected again.
Well, for me, I will say, especially my go-to persons and my ride or die, I put down because some of them I kind of want to say because one of them is my cousin. Her name is Maria Romanic, and my other two ride or dies is on this call with us too. Carrie Evans, and I have Carol Becker and Chaz as my go-to and my ride or die kind of thing. Like I feel like they have been giving me a lot of tools and just actually getting the better version out of myself. That and especially like my two churches I'm in, especially. I think one of them was, yeah, one of them is like my Pursuit, Surrender Church family. Like I want to say like my ride or die persons really helps. If I had a therapist, I would say my therapist.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Chris, you're back.
Yeah, I'm gonna try again. Is this better?
Yeah, much better.
Awesome. So there are two primary resources that I've definitely come to recommend. One is the Global Martial Arts University online, which I found during the quarantine. It taught me my bow staff stuff, and my instructor was a really understanding, forgiving man, and that sort of thing, and very patient. It helped that he was Canadian, so. But joking aside, though, like for example, when I put in my final reflection for my black belt that I was partly inspired by Darth Maul in Star Wars Episode One to do Bojitsu. He was like, "Yeah, that's you." Um, but speaking of, I always found, especially pre-Disney Star Wars, to be a source of comfort, inspiration, moral, that sort of thing. Especially when, if you look at episodes 1 through 6, you see how Anakin and Luke are foils of each other, because where Anakin didn't have a support network and he was vulnerable to the Emperor for that reason, Luke had a strong enough one to where there was nothing the Emperor could do to turn him to the dark side, because Luke had real love and that sort of thing. And then the final one, and this is perhaps my coolest one. I really enjoyed this. Like, it's a tie with the Bo Staff School, but I really enjoy this as one of the most wonderful things. I actually found, quite by accident, online a Japanese man who is a legit samurai and descendant of samurai and ninjas alike, with a 450-year practice in his family of the sword and all that stuff. And he fits the Japanese sensei stereotype you see in movies to a T. Like, his father trained him. It's been handed down for 450 years. He was actually the first of his family to be allowed to teach non-blood outsiders um, in the 450-year history of his lineage. And so I felt really honored to be one of many in his ranks for that reason. But one day I brought a lightsaber for lessons instead, and he totally geeked out. So I found out he was another Star Wars nerd. And the reason I list both of them is because my autism was never an issue for them. The impediments with my autism that may have been obvious to them were never issues, because they saw that I was so diligent and dedicated to learning what they had to teach, that it that they chose to nurture those strengths rather than worry about my limitations.
Exactly. And I actually appreciate that you highlighted something that we haven't really talked about yet, is like representation in media. Just like how you can connect to certain characters and how it can really help you navigate and, see what's happening and just be like, okay, like that resonates with me, and maybe even helps.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention Anakin and Luke, granted, but at the same time, interestingly enough, for those that don't know, I mentor autistic youth professionally. So I guess I'm at the place where I'm the person I needed where I was growing up now, like Kyle was referring to.
Mhm.
And my unofficial nickname with my boss is Obi-Wan. And at first, I didn't quite get it. But then, especially when the Obi-Wan Kenobi series came out, it made sense, because I was like, oh, we both had this arc where we were guilty for things that were maybe beyond us, or maybe were not within our power to fix, or we tried saving people that maybe couldn't be saved, but we let go of that eventually to become better people. And yeah, if you put the Obi-Wan Kenobi series together, which is in between episode 3 and 4, you find that's exactly what he does. He does let go of the things that were debilitating him from the trauma and Revenge of the Sith, to then become the Ben Kenobi that we knew in episode 4.
Exactly. Thank you, Chris. Chaz, are there any people, places, programs that have made a difference in you feeling like you belong?
Yes. So when I lived in Minneapolis, obviously there were more opportunities for like groups and things like that, which I really do miss coming back to North Dakota, just not having the vast opportunities, I guess, and diversity of groups. Um, as I had available to me in Minneapolis. One of them was a coming out group that hugely affected my life on a positive note, just get me to accept who I was and things. And then, uh, so by church, we would have, there's a group of us that had Tuesday night crafting because we prepared for craft bazaar every fall. So we did that and still trying to find that group of crafting people here in North Dakota. And 8 years later, I still have not found these people. I know there's people that craft, but nobody that ever wants to get together and craft. Um, and I think really getting involved in the advocacy community and the disability community, uh, that disability community, they just accept all people and differences and stuff. And most of them seem to accept the queer community as well because you're not seen as, differences are just seen as part of who you are and not the whole person. So that has kind of been, well, I've been in the working with the disability community since I graduated high school. So, um, and now that's my job, it's pretty easy to find my people within that community. And another difference that has really helped me is I have a service dog, emotional support animal, and he can read me pretty well. That when I get stressed, he's right there, helping me, re-regulate and stuff. Um, so there's him too, and then obviously the professional side of things as well, and my groups like the Consumer Family Network, which is a peer run mental health organization in North Dakota. There's some other peer groups that are starting and stuff, and then I have some online groups. I'm part of the Robin Priest Live Your Truth peer support network that does an exploration and mastery thing, and they have weekly um, like peer support meetings and stuff. So really, really great just to have that support. So
Yeah, and somebody did post in the chat, check out your library or extension office to see if they have any groups that craft. That's an excellent resource. We need to add those to our resource list that we put together. Kyle, how about you?
So I'm gonna answer it two different ways. Because when I entered the disability like professional community, I gained such a feeling of belonging and such a source of support. I'm reminded of what Liz and Chad, you both were there that night before Power Up Conference when a bunch of us that were attending the conference were just hanging out at the hotel bar. I haven't felt that kind of belonging in a minute. So yeah, that is so entering this field has been a wild change for just my sense of belonging and my social support. Before my comedy and my career started, so I am what I like to call a energy vampire, but in a good way. I feed off of people's energy all the time. That's but part of the reason I'm an entertainer. So before, what I would do just to get myself out of that negative headspace, I would get dressed, probably a little bit overdressed, and I would get out of the house, even if it was just to go have a cheeseburger or something, because then you can kind of feed off of the people's energy.
Well, and that's a beautiful segue into the last question. Is there any advice that you would give to people who might be feeling lonely or disconnected and they don't know where to start? So, I mean, Kyle, you just get up, get ready, and go out,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a cheeseburger.
Well, that, and like I kind of said earlier, if you keep showing up in spaces that reflect your personal values, the right people are gonna find you. It's only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. Liz, how about you? Any advice?
I will say, even if we feel disconnected, we must start where we are first. To put our needs, we should put our needs before others. We must feel our feelings because we can't avoid them. So we can't move on. If we can't, feeling our feelings is hard for them to move on. But life is just like surfing. When we get caught in the impact zone, you'll need to get right back up because you never know what's over the next wave. We don't need easy. We just need the impossible.
That's beautifully said, Liz. Thank you. Chaz, any last advice?
So I just have to laugh at Liz's. It sounds like you've taken some books from the Bethany Hamilton presentation we were at on Monday night. So I guess really to fight that loneliness and is really to find your people, which I know is so much easier said than done. But those people that you can really connect to that have the, interests as you, those supportive people, accepting those invites and the people that do want to include you in different things. This is really where I struggle, is that I always just kind of feel like, even though I have the invite, it's like, I'm going to be a nuisance, just a burden, just an extra person, not really part of this family, different things. But they invited you, so they obviously want you there. So accepting those invitations. So that's one of the things that I continue to work on and that I have to remember is important. I do a lot of searches on Facebook and stuff, so there are some occasional crafting things and different Eventbrite things that I do. I'm really great at signing up and showing interest. I'm really awful about showing up and attending, unless it's something that I have a professional drive to be at. And I think can I go back to this one with the depression and getting out of bed? Can I answer that quick too,
Yeah, yeah,
Krista?
please.
So somebody up here asked about what would help for someone with I can't find it right now, to depression to get up and get out and do things. So for me, schedule, like I commit to my boss that I'm not a morning person. So 10 a.m. is the time that I say that I'm going to be at work, and I still sometimes have to work really hard to be clocked in by 10 a.m. And the other thing that I have to remember, and I'm getting better at, is accepting that sometimes your body just needs a rest and your body knows what it needs. So, and my therapist preaches to me on this one too, that it's okay to say, today I'm going to rest, like on a weekend, or, last week I actually took 3 days off to just reset. I don't want to get, too much into political stuff and stuff, but we're all kind of stressed right now. So last week I took 3 days off, and just kind of reset, accepting that I might not get a lot done. I didn't really I clocked in a little, or didn't clock in, but checked some emails here and there. But I was kind of hoping to get some things straightened in my apartment, and I accepted that no, my body needed to rest, and that was okay. So not really getting down on myself when, I sleep in for that extra hour and stuff because that's what my body told me it needed.
Well, and I think it's important to point out, Chaz, that when stressful seasons do enter your life, there's no wrong response. Some people shut down, and like me, when I get in survival mode, I fight. That's my first response. So whether you're a fighter or a shut downer, there's no wrong way to handle like stress and these bad circumstances in your life. Well, I take that back. There are wrong ways, but that's another echo session completely.
And then as well, I know I've recommended martial arts and Buddhist things a lot, but I will actually add, well, I've already added links to two of my three schools, so there's that. But anyway, the caveat that I would add for anybody that is looking to use those as a resource, have a good answer for the question, why do you fight? Because if, for example, the answer that you have in your mind with any form, not just kung fu or boxing or anything like that, if it's just to learn to whoop some, you know what, then you're not going to get very far. But if it's like with me, where you're seeking clarity of purpose or introspection or just trying to generally be a better person, then finding a teacher who nurtures those things will bring out the, if you will, the kung fu fighter in you.
Mhm. Well, this was absolutely wonderful. I'm sorry we did reach our time limit here. So thank you all so much to our panelists. And also thank you to the Echo team. There was a lot of effort and time that was put into putting together this series. So I just want to give a shout out to Christine Bridgen, Jody Patchen, and Kyle Erickson for helping make this come to fruition. Please take a moment to fill out our evaluation. This evaluation is for the series as a whole, and this really, really helps us with funding for future series, but then also making tweaks to this because we are definitely hoping to share this session again or do another implementation again in the future. So thank you all. Thank you. We got some thank yous for transparency and honesty. I mean, this is pretty vulnerable stuff that you all shared, and it's going to help people. So thank you for being willing to share.
At least personally, I think if all the pain that I went through in my past, if I can help one person, then what I went through was worth it. So that's my kind of my thoughts on that.
Exactly. Thank you all so much. Thank you. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you
Wonderful.
for having us.
Well, I'll give you virtual claps here.
Yes, thank you guys. You guys have done an amazing job with this series and stuff, and thanks for the invite today.
Yeah, thank you.